Hello and welcome to Season 4, Episode 16 of Logicast, the AWS News podcast brought to you by Logicata. I'm Carl Robinson, CEO and co-founder of Logicata, and I'm joined today, thankfully, after an entire week off, by John, as always, good old lead cloud engineer. How are you doing today after your week off, John?
It wasn't a week, it was 6 days. Let's be very clear about that. It wasn't a full week.
Well, a work week is only 5 days, and last week it was only 4 days, in fact, so yeah.
All right, pedant. No, I'm all right. Can't complain. Can't complain. I can. Oh, I won't.
You often do, and in fact, you were in our preamble. But it's probably not best for the listeners.
Oh, it's the standard DIY tales for the listeners, isn't it? Is what DIY has John done this week? Well, I changed a door handle that I've already changed once before because the same one's broken again. Brilliant. Oh, well, and for the listeners that do care, I did pass my exam.
Yes, SA Pro. Yes, I forgot we mentioned that last week.
Congratulations.
So yeah, well done. Yeah, and you got a better score than me.
But I should do, really.
You should do, because you're an engineer and I'm a salesman, really. So yeah.
And this is where I completely shoot myself in the foot and go, I don't quite understand why it has such a reputation for being a nasty exam. Okay, it was hard, but it was probably as hard as the DevOps Pro one, and that one doesn't have this kind of aura around it that the SA Pro does. So I don't get it.
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover, I think, because I've been doing some of the training for the DevOps Pro, and it's a lot of the same modules as SA Pro. So obviously it doesn't have any of the CI/CD type stuff in there, but
no. And who uses OpsWorks? Really?
I haven't actually done any of the certifications, but the common thing that I hear is DevOps Pro is definitely one of the harder ones.
Yeah, well, that's let me introduce you as you're speaking, Satya. So we're very pleased to welcome Satya Bhatt today, AWS Hero, as our guest. So I'm very curious then, Satya, as an AWS Hero with no certifications, I think is that unusual?
Probably not. I think I started working. Let me give you my introduction first. So my full name is Satyajit Bhatt, but nobody calls me that because it's too big. It's too mouthful. So I go by Satya Bhatt everywhere. So name a website, and probably I have reserved Satya Bhatt, even though I probably don't use it as much. I used to be a DBA. That was like my first half of my career, and then I saw DBAs were going the way of the dinosaur. The jobs are getting lesser. Managed services were eating a lot of our operational overhead. So I started transitioning to cloud and DevOps, and that's where I've been working for the past decade or so. So by day job, I am a staff software engineer at a not so small company called The Trade Desk. We do real-time advertisements on the internet. I'm an AWS Hero. That's an honorary title given by AWS for my contributions to community. I'm not an AWS employee. I'm also one of the few heroes who, like, as I mentioned, I don't have any certifications because I just picked up projects and I went with it. I never had the time to dive into certifications. And more importantly, I've never worked with a partner company. So there was never any requirement. Like, I know partners need to have some amount of people who are certified. So there was never a requirement for me. I always felt that, and of course, there's the other side that I absolutely hate exams. I'm terrified of them. That's actually the biggest reason why I've never given my certifications, because I am pretty sure I'm going to fail them, or I would like to believe so, and then I'll pass with flying colors, I hope. Besides that, I'm also an author. I've written 2 books, 2 editions of Practical Docker with Python, which is about how do you take a program, take a application, containerize it, and I wouldn't say it's not targeted for advanced professionals. I would say beginner intermediate level is what I would like to say. That's published by Apris, and I'm also one of the co-authors of the CDK book. So if you use AWS CDK, if you want to know about tips and how to get better with the CDK, go to www.thecdkbook.com. Besides that, I used to run the AWS user group for Bangalore. So that was like from 2015, 2016, all the way to like 2019-ish. I've also run a couple of CDK days. I try to contribute to the community however I can, in terms of like, I think this is actually my first ever podcast, but I'm all over. Like I used to be pretty active on Stack Overflow, on the AWS Reddit, tons of Discord channels. So all of this meant that AWS saw the need to recognize me for my contribution. So that's how I became a hero. I still don't know the exact. I think it's a bit of a black art. Like nobody knows why they become a hero. All that happens is one day you get an email saying, "Hey, we would like you to be named as a hero. Are you okay with that?" And yeah, that's how it's become.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty grand title, isn't it? I don't know why anybody would be offended by being called a hero, but are you a hero in a particular category, or?
Yeah. So I actually used to be again, one of the few things that has happened is like I used to be a community hero. So AWS divides. I don't think divides is the right term for it. They like to there's specific categories, but it's not as strict as like with the community builders where you apply for a specific category as such. It's sort of a free flowing thing. I was named as an AWS community hero because that was where most of my impact was. I moved from community hero to container hero. I think that happened sometime maybe like 2-3 years ago, and that was because back in 2019 I moved from Bangalore to Romania. Now moving continents, it's hard enough, and then when you move from a place where English is a majority, it's still not pretty prominent. Like one of the primary languages, I guess, is English in Bangalore, at least. To a country which doesn't speak a whole lot of English, it's really difficult to be part of the community because, like people find it difficult to converse in English. They feel much more comfortable with the language that they know and grew up in. And I did learn Romanian, but it was really hard to have conversational fluency. So I started focusing a little bit more on the container side. And then the CDK book happened, Practical Docker with Python happened, so it made natural sense. And I was working more with containers anyway. So that's why I changed categories. Realistically, nothing else has happened. It's just that it's container hero. That's it, from community hero. So yeah.
So are you trying to do all the continents then? Because obviously you've India, Europe, Australia now. It's a lot of miles to move.
Yeah, I have worked in the US as well. So Africa, China. Well, India's part of Asia, so Antarctica's not covered. So I don't know. Maybe once I've decided that I've made enough money to retire, maybe I'll set up a small little base in Antarctica and offer remote cloud services for extreme weather conditions, disaster recovery and all of that.
Go the other way. Move to Svalbard.
Oh man, that'd be good.
Cooling data centers won't be an issue in Antarctica. Powering them might be, but anyway. So on that note, let's talk about AWS news. As regular listeners to the podcast will know, we are here to talk about AWS news. Once a week, I curate a list of AWS news, which goes out via my weekly AWS News Roundup newsletter. Then John and I pick a selection of the articles that we'd like to talk about with our guest. The first one this week was actually picked by Satya. So I'm going to come to you first, Satya, this week, which is unusual. But this article is a new feature announcement about Amazon CloudFront that Anycast static IPs are now supported for Apex domains. So what was it that caught your eye about this one, Satya?
So first of all, I'm honored that I get to lead the pack.
I think you're the first guest. It's your first podcast, and you're the first guest to get to go first. So there's a lot of firsts here. So it's
breaking new ground.
Yeah.
So for reference, Anycast is a networking methodology where basically multiple devices get the same IP, which is kind of strange when you think about it, because usually people are more familiar with each device getting a very own unique IP. Now with Anycast, basically you have the same IP that is being advertised, as the term is, from multiple devices, and the network, based on network hops, latency, etc., it picks the one which is closest. Something that caught my eye is this is actually so I actually thought Anycast didn't exist in CloudFront for a long time, and then I found out that it was actually announced in last reInvent in November 2024. So you still have to do a little bit of extra setup. And then when I read the article again, I realized this was Anycast for Apex domain. Now, Apex domain means what is known as a naked domain. So you go to logicast.com, that is your Apex domain. This caught my eye because, strictly speaking, this goes against the DNS spec, because you're not allowed to have a CNAME as a raw domain. Now, traditionally, different providers, Cloudflare, for example, was I think probably one of the first people who introduced something called a CNAME flattening, where they will internally pretend that there is an internal CNAME, but they actually do the underlying scenes or whatnot of resolving that naked domain. But now AWS has it, so it's some of the things which is the reason I picked it up is, like, you don't really see a lot of AWS catching up to Cloudflare. Cloudflare has been doing a lot of really fancy stuff in the whole like with the R2, D4, etc. It's like one of the first things that I see that AWS is sort of catching up and trying to beat Cloudflare with this. And the other thing is, well, if you don't like your www dots anymore, but we're forced to use it with CloudFront, well, you don't have to do it anymore now, because you can just do logicast.com and point it to CloudFront, and it's CDN proposed. It's fronted by CloudFront, so you get accelerated domains, all the fun things about Cloudflare. About CDN. I think it's, and when you're working with large enterprises, I don't know how many of you have to do IP whitelisting or IP allowlisting. I know it's 2025, but I'm still staggered by the amount of times I've had to do IP allowlisting. Imagine allowlisting for a CDN; it's insane. Now with Anycast IPs, you get like a couple of IPs, so now that drastically reduces the amount of IPs that you have to allow list. So all of these things are the reason why I like, this is kind of interesting. I have to go back to my work and figure out, where I can set this up. I'm pretty sure there's a whole bunch of places where I can improve my workflow, my operational overhead, and I'm sure it's going to be the same for a lot of people as well.
John, thoughts on this?
So I like this for slightly different reasons, but this is quite interesting. So Anycast aside, Cloudflare was the first, as you say, to do CNAME flattening, which allows you to use a CNAME as if it was an A record. Okay, a couple of other providers I'm aware do a similar thing, but they call them slightly different things because there wasn't. I still don't think there's been an RFC to allow this yet. So it's kind of implemented differently by different DNS providers. So Cloudflare just call it a CNAME and they flatten it. DNS Made Easy, I think, call it an A name and let you do the same thing. You can use a CNAME as an A record. Route 53 does this through an alias record, and a number of other providers do alias records as well, which means that you can point to a DNS name at your Apex. Cool, wonderful. Lots of, let's say, bad DNS providers, i.e. the ones that come with your cheap domain registrar, so your GoDaddies, your 123 Regis, your Namecheaps, those sorts of people, won't support that because it's not a standard feature, and their DNS provision is just going to be bog standard. So if you happen to be using a GoDaddy or a DNS Made Easy or a Namecheap or whoever, you can now point to CloudFront directly. Brilliant. Without having to, set up 21 records, you can do it on 3 of them, which is much more palatable rather than, sitting there doing 21 sodding great records. 3 is much more palatable. And it means that if you're fronting the whole thing behind CloudFront, you have you don't have this requirement to move to a grown up, for lack of a better term, DNS provider if you don't want to. You can leave it exactly where it is and just use CloudFront. Brilliant.
Could have come in useful for some projects we were working on by the sound of it.
Yeah, it only affects CloudFront. It doesn't affect any of the other services that you might want to point things to. So if you're pointing to load balancers, you're still going to have the DNS issue. But AWS's recommendation is don't do that. Sit it behind CloudFront, even if you're not really doing a lot, just because you get the shield support, you get so you get your layer 7 and your layer 3 and 4 coverage with WAF and with Shield if you connect it to CloudFront. So that's kind of their recommendation anyway.
Cool. Well, thumbs up all round for the Anycast static IP support for Apex domains. Let's move on to our second article for this week. This is an article about VPC peering billing, which AWS have apparently simplified. So I must confess, I'm not particularly familiar with VPC peering billing and the complexities of said billing, but the complexities are now fewer, apparently, if we believe this announcement. So, John, are you familiar with the complexities of VPC peering billing?
Yes, very much so. So there's actually no charge for peering your VPCs, and you'd know this because you've done your SA Pro exam. You'd know this.
Yeah, that was 2.5 years ago, so I've forgotten it again.
You best renew quick.
Yeah.
So there's no charge for peering your VPCs. What the charge is for inter-availability zone data transfer, and that can get prohibitively expensive at scale. I think it's either 1 or 2 cents per gigabyte. I forget, because depending on it's cross-region or cross-AZ, it's 1 or it's 2, or it's 1 on the way out and it's 1 on the way in, or it's a bit of a mare, to be really honest. But there was never a here's what the fee is for going from this VPC to that VPC. It was just, here's what your cross-AZ charges are. Thump, have a bill. So what this is doing is it's just changing a line item on the bill effectively, and it's breaking out your VPC in and out traffic from your inter-AZ in and out traffic. Okay, so that's really handy if you need to do this. If you don't have a VPC peer set up already, and you're thinking, well, I might need to connect a couple of VPCs, use Transit Gateway and just do it sensibly. Like, seriously, I know it costs more money, but just do it properly. But if you already have VPC peering in place, or if you have a particularly tight CFO that's like, no, we only need to connect 2 VPCs together and we don't care about transitive routing and all this jazz, then this will make your life explaining what the hell's going on to your finance team a bit easier. You're still going to have a monthly conversation with them to explain OPEX versus CAPEX, I expect, but this does make your life a little bit easier. And, it's just it's a change to the billing, so there's no need to do anything. You don't have to reconnect your VPCs. It's just going to happen, which is great.
Satya, your thoughts on this one?
I really haven't worked a lot with billing for a whole lot, but in the past couple of weeks or so, I've been digging into a lot of the CORs, or whatever is the new name for it. I still call it by CORs. And a lot of my work has been like using the usage type API call and figure out, how much of percentage goes to where. And I think the thing which is kind of, I wouldn't say weirded out, it's kind of surprised me, is that they posted on April 11 that as of today, we are adding a new line item. I know it's not the same. I know it's just a rename this thing, but when you're looking at a bill, like, why do I have a region name VPC in out bytes starting from April 11? What happened? And that's probably what is going to catch a lot of people. The only thing else is that they say, AWS says in their blog, and I have it right here on my site. It says to understand the inter-availability zone VPC peering usage, but they name the usage type as region name VPC peering. So where is the inter-AZ in that region name? It's kind of confusing when you say region name and then you're saying inter-AZ. It's anyway. From a billing perspective, I think anything to make the billing more clearer is always a good thing from my side. Although, to be honest, I don't know how many people actually go through line by line and see like how much it goes. You usually end up like, what's my top spend? 80% comes in EC2, or more likely NAT gateway or data processing, whatever it is, and they just pass by. I think it's good to have, but yeah.
I think it's FinOps people that go through these things line by line, and if they make it too simple, there'll be no need for FinOps people. So,
well, FinOps isn't necessarily about reduction of cost directly. It's more about elimination
mapping,
of waste. So this doesn't help that per se. Maybe it does. I don't know. If you're saying that you're transferring lots of data from one VPC to another, why is that? That would kind of be the why. The actual, I've never seen a bill where data transfer between things within the AWS account itself actually mattered in the scope of the bill. I've seen them where transfer out to the internet mattered because that's like 8 times as expensive or something like that. It's really significantly more money. But I've never seen it where cross AZ transfers mattered more than like a one-off big bill, apart from, I suppose, NASA, because they cocked that up. But
I've seen inter-AC billing costs to be, I would say, deal breakers for many projects because of the sheer amount of volume that happens. Enough that they're like, no, we are not going to do inter-AC or multi-AC. We're going to stick to one AC because that's what is. It's sort of fascinating that AWS on one side says for redundancy, for better scalability, do multi-AC, and then oh yeah, you want to do it? Sure, 90% extra cost for inter-AC transfer. And it gets even more confusing when you're peering cross accounts, for example, because now you have to consider the AZ identifiers. You're just going by the simple AZs is no longer enough. I can get into a whole rant about how billing is. It just takes too long, and I can see why FinOps is a thing now, or has been a thing for a while now. But yeah, I think anything that makes it simpler is always good, in my opinion.
Absolutely. On that note, let's move along to our third article for this week. And this is not so much news, although it is a recent blog post. It was news back in 2023 when this feature was launched. But this is a recent blog post just reinforcing why you should validate recovery readiness with AWS Backup restore testing. So, as I mentioned, I think the article mentions that AWS Backup restore testing was launched in November 2023. It's all very well doing backups, but if you don't know that the backup data you've got actually works, then you ought to be doing restore testing. So, John, I know we've spoken about this on the podcast before, but let's talk about it again.
This is bizarrely one of my more interesting things to talk about. I quite like this because I remember reading the announcement when it came out, and then several announcements where it got better and better, and we internally got really excited about this because it's the sort of thing that we get excited about because it's the sort of thing that we do on a daily basis, and we're really boring. Oh, I can test my backups automatically. Yay. Because we were looking at actually doing this ourselves, and then AWS did what they do, which is just do the thing for you after you've tried to work out how to do it yourself, which is great. And I did this in a workshop at reInvent last year as well. So it's worth knowing that this is a thing that you can do this. And the short version is, because the article's great and you should absolutely go and read it. But the short version is, as you say, the last backup you have is actually the last one you've validated. You might have taken 10 since then. If you don't know they're any good, you can't necessarily trust them. And up until a couple of years ago now, we'd kind of been operating on blind faith that AWS Backup was doing what it said it was going to be doing, and that it was running the backups, and that you could go and restore them. And okay, sure, you do a test once in a while, or you built your own way of doing this with something like a step function or what have you, and then they went and launched it, which is brilliant. But this has been around for a couple of years now. It's well worth looking at the article because it talks about why you'd want to do this. And if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I don't know why I need to test my backups. One, you just need to test them because you need to test them. But then there's other things around there, inclusive things like cybersecurity frameworks, ISO standards, and that covers things like making sure that your backups are working and taking and restoring and all that kind of thing. In terms of how it works, it's pretty simple. The diagram is horrific, but it's pretty simple to configure because it's reference architecture for restore testing. And you look at it and it's backup vaults and supported workloads, and it's air-gapped vaults, and it's Elastio test frameworks and Event Bridge and more air-gapped vaults, and it's just a mare. You don't really need to do lots of that for your workload account and your vault account and your forensics account and all the rest of this to take advantage of the fact that you can test your own backups. It's worth potentially moving your backups out of your prod workload account into somewhere else where you can play with them to validate this, but you don't necessarily have to, but you probably should. And then you just configure the restore testing. It'll stand the backup up for you, and you've got options as to whether you want to hang on to them after it's done, or if you want it to get rid of them, or how long you want to retain them for, that kind of thing. And that's good because it proves that the act of restoring everything works, which is great from an audit perspective, because you can say to an auditor that isn't, waterboarding the Kool-Aid, as our friend Brian likes to say, that the restores actually work and that you can kind of get the data back out of them. You do probably still want to build some sort of process around that, probably using EventBridge, that says, I've done this restore, it's up, and then some sort of process to go and look at it to validate that the data's there, checksums or what have you. But this is good. It's well worth reading this. And like I say, if you know you need to do this, go look at this. If you think, what do I need to test my backups? You need to test your backups. You just do.
Satya, do you test your backups?
Oh, well, you see where this is going. As a former DBA, one of the first things that I would always do whenever I joined a new project, a new job, is always ask, where are your backups? And it wasn't enough of an answer. If they said, here they are, I'm like, no. Tell me when was the last time you restored them and showed me it's working. Now that's when I consider a good backup. It's like I completely agree with what John says, that because I see too many people. I think we've had a bunch of incidents, like for example, GitLab saying, "Hey, look, we are doing your backups. Whoops, it's been silently been discarded or never backed up." And on that note, I actually kind of hated this blog. I found it. I found it too wordy. I don't know. It just didn't catch my. It didn't catch my attention. Let me put it that way. Right. I maybe my mindset was going in the wrong way, because I saw, backup restore testing. Let's see some tips, actual tips and how to do about it. But what I got was a huge bunch of word salad going about why you should do it. Yada yada blah blah blah. Which is, again, I understand it's a whole different audience, but I know why we need it. What I would like was, some simple ways, and probably there are other blog posts which do it. And by gosh, that diagram was so horrific. I'm like, I saw that and I just closed the tab. I'm like, nobody's going to watch this. And having said that, the most current project that I'm working on at work is, in fact, doing this exact thing, which is we're preparing for DR and stuff, which is, do backups, and again, the first question is that I ask is, have you factored that, you need to actually restore it, and, what process do you have to verify that, you've got it restored? And I think restore testing is nice to have, but it's also nice to do the actual thing from end to end, because that's going to uncover a whole lot of process gaps. Things like people assume you're going to have, permissions, or, you've factored into these things. You wrote it when your naming standards were not right, and now you're looking, or things like, the AWS UI has changed, or we don't have this anymore. So it's good to have. I'm also a reliability engineer on one side of things. So as a reliability engineer, nothing makes me more happier than doing something on a repeated basis, because that keeps me closer to being able to do it without worrying. So I think, yeah, definitely do your restore testing. Otherwise, you're going to be, I don't know, on Hacker News on writing saying, "Oh, we messed up by not backing up," or rather, we thought we were backing up, we did not do it. And I also wanted to close out with this. This actually happened to me, where I think this is about a decade ago, when I was just starting off as an AWS, working on AWS. I actually deleted an RDS instance. Oops. And I did it because I thought I was deleting an RDS which was not in use anymore. But thankfully, I actually had the backups and restores validated. So that was like the best validation for my backup process, because I had a whole lot of arguments against, we don't need this, we've got AWS backing up, and we've got point-in-time restores and snapshots and all of that, and I accidentally deleted all of them, which is like a big it's a learning exercise, I guess. But yeah, don't do that. Test your backups. You'll be glad you did it when it comes to it.
It's always humans, isn't it? It's always humans cause these issues.
Are you the source of that meme then? All right, if coffee doesn't wake you up in the morning, try dropping a database in prod.
I wish I could claim that, but no, I'm not. Although that I will totally attest to that, Paikash. It was 10 a.m. India time. I was working in Bangalore. We were a small 5-member startup, and the call that I had to make to my manager saying that I'm sorry, I have to give you some bad news. I think I just killed our business. It's like, and I have to give due credit to the person, to my manager. He's like, he said, "Come, walk with me. Tell me what happened." And then he's like, "Okay, now you go sit. You don't have to worry about anything. We'll take care of it. Rest." I think that was when I realized what psychological safety means in a job and what good managers do. Because you're like, it's okay, you messed it up. Let's worry about bringing this back up, and let's not worry about why, how it happened. Let's just focus on getting it back up, and then we can take care of a retrospective on how we can make it better.
I once had the exact opposite experience, to be really honest. I hadn't broken it that time, but I was working in a bank and I'd broken several things in prod because I was a new grad and they let me loose in prod, which was a mistake. And it was an article got sent around by emails that was talking about blameless retrospectives and all this jazz. And then something goes wrong, and then the same person that sent this article around went, "So who did that?" Point.
The new boy. Everybody pointing at the new boy. Anyway, on that note, let's move along to the first of two articles from the Register on this week's episode. The first one is all about sustainability or lack of. So the title, let me get my teeth in for this one. AI is making hyperscalers' sustainability pledges look more and more like a Hail Mary. So a great L-Reg title, as usual. The subtitle goes on to say, carbon capture, SMRs, fusion power, tech titans' climate strategies are packed with moonshots. So, of course, this is all about how can you balance sustainability goals with building massive power-hungry AI data centers to do very important work, such as generating everybody's action figure doll for the latest social media trend.
I mean, I'd love to see on the Studio Ghibli's art style as well. That's a whole copyright issue, and I'm really unhappy about that. Don't even get me started.
But I'd love to know just how much power the whole action doll trend actually consumed. I doubt there's any reports on that somewhere. Nobody's paying for any of this. Well, somebody's paying for it, but certainly not the people who are creating their own action dolls. They're not paying for it. Yeah, the dread to think how much power that actually consumed. But yeah, John, your thoughts on this?
I mean, it's just kind of gets worse, doesn't it? I went to a green software event a couple of months ago, and I meant to go to one last week, but didn't happen. And if you look at,
just think of the you reduced your carbon footprint by not going, so you did the right thing.
I didn't drive there, yeah, but I didn't do anything involved, which is a shame because it was a cloud specific one as well. But to be honest, I kind of wanted to go there just to troll, so I probably shouldn't have gone. But that's always good fun. The last big kind of power user that we were railing about on these sorts of forums was Bitcoin, because the Bitcoin network used as much power, I think, as all of Argentina or something stupid like that, as all of I don't know if you'd call Argentina first world, second. I don't know what the classifications are, but of a fairly large Latin American nation, right? It was ridiculous, and AI is even worse. We like to think of IT and tech more generally as kind of a solution to a lot of these climate problems, without really understanding that we are a big part of the problem. Because IT is a funny industry. If you take IT as an industry by itself, it's actually an embedded industry in every other industry in creation. Cool. But if you take it as an industry by itself, I think running all the data centers in all of the planet and all the rest of it puts out about as much carbon as shipping does internationally. And we like to rail against that one when we're just as bad. But we don't think we are, because I'm sitting in my house. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not generating anything. Well, my lights are on. My power's on. I'm talking to you over the internet, and that's all taking loads of power somewhere else as well. And I've got solar panels. I'm doing my bit. But it's ridiculous the amount of power that all these things take. And that's just me sitting here. And then you look at all of the GPUs that are running, or all the ARM chips. And that's fine because they use less power than x86. But one ARM chip uses less power than one x86 chip, but there's a million of them at least, right? So the amount of power being used is ridiculous. All of this is largely being generated in a non-renewable way because of where these data centers are running. They just are. And then all of these, it will give you a tax break if you can get off of our grid when we need to. Cool, let's buy a lot of diesel generators. Okay, that's just genius galaxy brain move there. And then, as you say, as the article says, this is looking more and more like Hail Marys and moonshots because it's carbon capture, which is kind of the horse has bolted, quick, run after it, and that kind of jazz. So I don't have an answer to this. I don't. I like, if you go through the article, it starts talking about nuclear and getting a renaissance and all this kind of jazz. And I'm a big fan of nuclear power. Generally, I am, because it's safer, and I might get some hate for this on the internet. It's safer than any other power generation method in history, with the exception of things like, the greener stuff. But of the really dirty ones, it's less people die from nuclear power generation than from coal plants because of air quality and all this jazz. And the energy density you get out of a nuclear power plant is ridiculous. So this is worth reading. It's a long old article, but I don't know that we have an answer to this, but it's absolutely worth thinking about.
Satya, your thoughts on this one?
Oh man, I don't know where to start. I think the article, is something which you would have to read multiple times to. Like, there's so many different aspects of it, which I honestly didn't even think about it. Nuclear power, all of that is, carbon capture. I actually didn't think carbon capture was an actual thing. I thought it was something that Civ 6 had, Civilization 6, popular 4X game. I thought it was just something out of fiction, but I realized it's an actual thing. Honestly, I don't know how it's going to help when, like you said, when the horse has already been bolted out. Having said that, I've been a gamer all my life. Before the AI revolution came together, one thing that we gamers had was GPUs, right? Multiple, like back in 2008, maybe Nvidia came out with their whole SLI, or maybe even older than that, 3FX, whatever. They came out with this SLI feature where you would stack 2 GPUs or 4 GPUs in parallel, just so that you get 2 of the GPUs handled rendering of alternative lines. Now, the reason I'm bringing it up is it's really easy for us to go to ChatGPT, Claude, Noah, whatever it is, right? And just type in, bring me some of this, and wait for a few seconds and get this. It's really hard to understand how much power these things consume. And again, the reason is because I'm a gamer, and I build my systems around my GPU. I don't build my systems around everything else. And there's a reason for that, because my GPU is going to consume at an average load probably 5 times as much power as what my next highest. So consider that my processor at its peak thermal capacity is going to consume 95 watts. My GPU is going to consume 500 watts or something like that. And this is a consumer GPU. Now imagine what's happening in your data centers, where we are talking about racks and racks of GPUs. So each rack is going to have 8 to 24 GPUs probably. And then, if you look at the first page, the first sentence, NVIDIA is building 120 kilowatt per rack. That's ridiculous. And they are going towards 600 kilowatt designs. I think it's hard to even for your average person even understand how much each of what these mean. If you have solar, go look at your power generation meters. Think about it. Compare it to this. Imagine consuming so much that imagine consuming in a minute what would take a day to generate. That is the level of GPU consumption you're talking about. And John, I don't really have a real answer to it, because in this whole AI scale, right, everything must be done right away. Whatever is the next trend, action figure, cartoon, whatever it is. And I don't know. It's like AI is the current, and I also feel that AI doesn't get as much flack as Bitcoin did for its power consumption, even though the monetary aspects from a monetary aspects point of view probably from Bitcoin than with AI. I don't know. Maybe that's wrong. Renewable energy, I guess, for the win. Otherwise, I think the next generation, I think power generation is going to have hard enough time to deal with the way that things are going with the power, with the whole weather change and whatnot.
The carbon capture thing is quite funny to me because tech bros have done what tech bros always do, and they've reinvented trees.
Yeah, but they've all been cut down. So, yeah.
But it's more efficient, and you don't have to grow, and you don't have to wait for.
On that note, let's move along. Oh,
You see the tech
sorry,
bro-
Satya. I thought you.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
No. I was just going to move us on
That's
to
right.
our final article for this week, which is another LReg article. And as regular listeners will know, we've spoken a number of times about this Competition and Markets Authority probe in the UK into the dominance of the three biggest cloud providers. There was a bit in the news again last week as AWS and Google have been railing once again against Microsoft about the cost of running Microsoft licensing anywhere else but Microsoft Azure. So the title of this article is AWS claims 50% of Azure workloads would jump ship if licensing costs allowed. It's a bold claim. I don't know if there are stats to back it up, but and I'll just read the subtitle as well. Bezos, Biz, and Google tell regulator higher cost of running Windows servers in their clouds isn't fair. So, Satya, what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm actually not familiar with the CMA side of things.
It's a very UK specific thing, but I think this is a global problem. It's just being highlighted by the Competition and Markets Authority probe in the UK.
That said, I think AWS has pulled out something from its back if it says that 50% of Azure workloads would jump ship if for licensing. I think that's a stretch, and that's a really, really long stretch. There's far other reasons why people, rather companies or organizations or CIOs or CTOs or whatever, hold on to Azure workloads, be it lock-ins, not necessarily vendor, workflow lock-ins. I think people have this, a lot of people have this imaginative thing where, just by running some commands, all of your data is automatically moved over and now you're on a new cloud. That doesn't work because behind everything, there's a lot of plumbing that's done, whether in terms of actual plumbing or whether in terms of user training, etc., etc. I think this claim is a bit of a hogwash, in my opinion. Is it? Can it be that people would jump or workloads would jump if licensing costs a lot? Probably 50%. No, I don't believe that. Much lesser. I think there's far other circumstances.
What do you think, John?
Yeah, no notes. I'd love to know where they found this number from because, as you said, I think they put it out their backside. It's 50% of workloads would jump ship. No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. It's much harder than that. There's an element of truth to it because I think a percentage would, but I don't think it's that high, right? I've, as I'm going to quote Brian again, I've waterboarded the Kool-Aid here, so I will just use AWS because that's my cloud of choice, right? And I have no desire or inclination to use the other two, right? Cool. Let's just park that for the minute. The running joke that I've been working with is use Google if you know you need to, use Microsoft Azure if you have to, otherwise use AWS. That's kind of the joke, right? Use Microsoft if you have to. And they have historically been really good about letting you move committed purchases between their service lines. So if you've got a committed purchase in one area, you can spend it in Azure and they don't really care. Cool. Would that still be true if license costs were lower to run on Google or to run on AWS? Yeah, probably, because they'll still be really good about it. You're still going to have this committed purchase and enterprise spend agreements and all the rest of it, and that's never going to go away. Microsoft is a convenient horse to beat on this particular one, though, because they've been hauled over the coals on a number of things by the CMA and other market authorities in the EU around things like stuff on the desktop OS with Internet Explorer being the default and not giving you options and all this kind of thing. So they're just a convenient foil for this particular thing to shout about. And to be fair, in this probe, it's not like AWS or Google haven't had a kicking from the CMA either. This is the long and short of it. This is the three rich boys in the corner going, it's not fair, teacher. Let's sod off. All of you are billionaires. So yeah, it doesn't wash. There's an element of truth to this, and Microsoft's licensing practices aren't great, but then neither are anybody else's.
Well, there we go. On that note, we have reached the end of our time for season 4, episode 16 of Logicast. So if you have made it this far, thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed it, tell your friends. We are available to download from wherever you download your podcasts. And if you'd like to see the funny faces we're pulling while we're talking about AWS news, you can also watch us on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube and like and subscribe. Thank you, John, as always, for your insights and for coming back to work after a week off. It's always nervous when people go away on holiday, hoping they're going to come back. And thank you, Satya, for joining us from literally the other side of the world, where you're heading into winter. We're heading into summer in the UK, although I'm sure our summer won't be as good as the one you'll get in Australia. But thank you again for listening, and we'll be back next week with another episode. See you again next time.